Interesting. Oh, hello there. I didn't even notice you were sitting there. How are you doing today? Good. I'm glad to hear that. My name is Ethan Butler. I'm the creator of the Ethan Butler Stories channel here on YouTube. Here I am. So, the reason why I'm making this video today is actually rather interesting. I'm a member of the Latitude Leadership Academy. If you haven't heard of it, now you have. Every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, we have to give devotions. Now, usually it's about whatever we find interesting in the Bible. Sometimes we just tell personal stories. Last week, Thursday, I gave a story about my great-grandfather, William Oliver Butler. And as I was talking, I got very nervous. For some reason, as I stood there with all these eyes watching me, I had this sense of dread and uneasiness, like I was going to mess something up. But my boss, Pastor Johnny, he said something that was actually rather inspiring to me. He said that I have a good way of speaking, and that he would love to watch me speak in a video. So today, I'm here to tell the story of my great-grandfather, but in video format. I would like to encourage you to please hit the like and subscribe button, and maybe I'll make more of these videos. Who knows, this could be the start of something great. Without further ado, let's get on with it. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the quick little interruption. I had to go fetch my notebook with all my points in it, because you can't really tell a story if you don't know what's happening. Now then, let's get on with it, shall we? Our story begins on the 3rd of September, 1939. If you're a history buff like me, you'd know that date better than anyone, because that's when Great Britain declared war on Nazi Germany. As was commonplace back then, the Commonwealth joined along quickly. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they all declared war on Nazi Germany. But one of Britain's subjects, the Union of South Africa, they had a bit of a problem. You see, many South Africans didn't like the British. For years upon years, the British had been treating the Afrikaners like dirt. So why would they want to go and fight in a war for the British? As a matter of fact, many Afrikaners actually sided with the Nazi Party more than they did the British. Now, if you're trying to declare war on someone, you don't exactly want all of your troops to have the opinions of the people you're going up against. So the British and the South Africans, they had to think of something, and they had to think of something quick. For 3 days, the South African Parliament tried to come up with a plan of what they would do next. And they did. They came up with a plan that served just well. Jan Christian Smuts, Prime Minister of South Africa, decided that instead of making service mandatory, service in the Union Defense Force would be voluntary. If you didn't want to fight in the army, you didn't have to fight in the army. You could stay at home. You could raise a farm. You could spend time with your children. Between 1939 and 1945, almost 334,000 South Africans, men and women, white, black, Indian, they all volunteered for the Union Defense Force. One of those 334,000 South Africans was my great-grandfather, William Oliver Butler. Here's a picture here. You see this? That's my great-grandfather. I'd say he's pretty handsome. I might be a bit biased. Anyway, back to our story. Let me tell you a little bit more about my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather, William, was born on the boat ride between Ireland and South Africa on the 4th of October, 1910. Fun little fact, that actually made his nationality a little difficult to try and figure out, because I don't really think you can put the Atlantic Ocean as a country of origin. My great-grandfather lived in Pietermaritzburg his entire life. He had 2 jobs. His first job was as a blocksman at a butchery. He would cut up meat. He would prepare all of these, meals. But his second job was as a salesman in a clothing shop. I don't exactly know how you go from being a butcher to being a clothes salesman, but I digress. In May 1940, my great-grandfather volunteered to join the Union Defense Force, and he went into the Natal Field Artillery Sea Battery. Now, between 1940 and 1941, he had been trained on how to operate a howitzer. South Africa used the 18-pounder, but when they hit the desert, they eventually adopted British 25-pounder howitzer guns. So not bad, Britain. In 1941, my great-grandfather and the rest of the men in his, artillery battery had been sent to North Africa. Now, my great-grandfather served in all sorts of battles, such as the Battle of El Alamein, Gazala, but the most infamous battle he partook in was Tobruk. Again, if you're a history buff, you'd know that Tobruk was considered the Allies' worst blunder, specifically South Africa's worst military blunder. On the 20th of June, 1942, almost 100,000 South Africans were captured by the Germans when their positions were overrun. Now, my great-grandfather was one of those 100,000, and he, and along with all of those poor South Africans, ended up in prisoner of war camps. Fortunately enough, my great-grandfather wasn't sent to a German prisoner of war camp just yet. He was sent to Campo 110. Campo 110 was not a prisoner of war camp in the most traditional of senses. Campo 110 was a salt mine located in Sardinia. Now, for a whole year, from 1942 to 1943, my grandfather was stuck in this salt mine. Now, I've never worked in a salt mine, but I can imagine that it's not very fun working in those conditions, especially when you're being, forced to do it at gunpoint. Now, in 1943, the Allied powers, consisting of the United States and the United Kingdom, they invaded Italy, and the Germans weren't very happy about that. So what they did was they went to all of the prisoner of war camps throughout Italy, and to make sure that the Allies didn't get their hands on their prisoners of war, the Germans marched. They marched all of these prisoners from Sardinia to northeastern Germany. Now, they didn't get to ride in trucks. They didn't get to drive there. They had to march from Sardinia to a prisoner of war camp in Germany called Stalag 8C. Now, famously enough, Stalag 8C is actually right next to Stalag Luft 3, which is the prisoner of war camp that The Great Escape was based off of. So there's some facts for you. From 1943 to 1945, my great-grandfather was stuck in Stalag 8C, which had been humorously nicknamed the Siberia of northern Germany because of just how much it snowed at Stalag 8C. My great-grandfather, and many of the men who were stationed there with him, told stories of how the Germans would always make sure that they got the Red Cross parcels first. The Royal Air Force would drop these parcels into the camp because people back home were worried. But the Germans always caught these parcels, and holding the South Africans back at bayonet, the Germans would go through these parcels. They would take things like chocolates, cigarettes, money, anything that they wanted, and they just gave whatever they didn't want to the South Africans. Now, in February 1945, the war started coming to an end. The Russians had been pushing the Germans back into Germany. The Allies had broken through the bulge and were just crossing into Germany. Now, the Germans didn't want these South African prisoners to fall into the hands of the Soviets, so they marched every single prisoner out of Stalag 8C and moved them west. The last prisoner of war camp that my great-grandfather ended up in was a prisoner of war camp called Stalag 9B, located in Bad Orb, Germany. Now, April 1945 comes along, and my great-grandfather, along with all the other prisoners in Stalag 9B, were liberated by the Americans. I'd give that a clap too, you know. My great-grandfather finally returned to South Africa on April 10th, 1945. How do I know this? Well, I have here my great-grandfather's service record, or at least some of it, and among these files is my great-grandfather's repatriation form. Now, if I can find it, there we go, repatriated XPW service record, right there. It says here, date and place of arrival, the 10th of the 4th of 1945. For most of World War II, my great-grandfather had been stuck in prisoner of war camps. Starting off in an Italian salt mine, eventually crossing over to a German prisoner of war camp, and finally another German prisoner of war camp. My grandfather had suffered greatly. Conditions in these prisoner of war camps, while not inhumane, weren't exactly very pleasant. I wouldn't like being in a prisoner of war camp, and where I'm not even serving in World War II. The message that I wanted to give was simple. If you don't like hearing Bible stories, I'd recommend you click off, because this is about to get very, very religious. The message I had was that we, as people, we tend to find ourselves stuck in the prisons of our mind. We can find ourselves stuck in the prison of our mind and the prison of comfort. We have this idea as people that suffering is not something we should go through. Suffering is completely immoral. Why do we suffer? Why would the ever-loving God let us suffer? The purpose of suffering is to help us grow. Although we may not like it, although suffering can ruin lives, it's very, very crucial. We as people, we as followers of Christ, we have to keep going. We have to keep moving. We have to carry the cross that Jesus gave his life for on. Who are we to say that we shouldn't suffer? The Lord our God suffered for us. The least we could do is carry a little bit of the burden. Now I know some people are thinking to themselves, and so you're saying suffering's good. No, I'm not saying that suffering is good, but I'm just saying that suffering shouldn't hold us back. We shouldn't be stuck in this mindset of, but I don't want to leave my comfort zone. I don't want to suffer. I want to be safe. Do you think Jesus was safe when he gave his life for us? Do you think Jesus was thinking of his comfort zone when he was being whipped by those Roman soldiers? Do you think Jesus thought that it was unnecessary for him to die on the cross. No. Jesus saw you and I, and he had to move forward with God's plan. He had to fulfill the covenant of Abraham. I have some very, very nice scriptures here in my little notebook. The first one I listed down was Psalms 23, verse 4. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. This is God telling us that we should not fear suffering. We should not fear evil, for he is with us. He is guiding us like the shepherd. We are the sheep, and he is the shepherd, leading us through the shadows of the valley of death. God is with us. Remember that. God is with us. Even when we feel alone, even when we feel like our prayers aren't being answered, God is with us. Another verse I have here is Romans 5, verses 3 to 4. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces endurance, perseverance, character, and hope. Suffering produces endurance. Suffering produces perseverance, character, and hope. We don't realize this, but the hardships that we go through on a daily basis, the problems in our lives, the times where we think that we're alone, that helps us to grow. That helps us to become better people. I don't like suffering. I don't want to suffer. But I understand that if I have to suffer one day to get to heaven, then it's a necessary evil. Now, I'm not saying suffering is evil, but I am saying that suffering can have good consequences in the end. Isaiah 41 verse 10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you." Before I read the rest of that, I just want to point out, so do not fear, for I am with you. We are so afraid of suffering. We are so afraid of coming out of our comfort zone because we can't understand that God is with us. We can't see him, so we think he's not there, but he is. God is with us. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you in my righteous right hand. This is God himself telling us that he will strengthen us, that he will help us, that he will uphold us. What should that tell us? God's not going to let us suffer for nothing. God's not going to let us hurt and toil over nothing. God only gives us what is necessary for our growth as Christians, for our growth as followers of Christ. Even if you're not religious, just think about it. If you're not religious, if you're an atheist or whatever you are, suffering can also lead to good things in your life. How can you understand where the good times are if you don't go through any bad times? If you don't go through hardship, how will you know when the hardship ends and the rewards are given out? I might be rambling here. I don't know. I might just be rambling. But I'd like to understand that this message that I have for you today means something. The last verse I have here is 2 Timothy 4 verses 7 over here. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. I have kept the faith. That is the most underestimated point of our journey. Faith. We must not let suffering consume us. We must not let the prison that our mind has created with comfort and safety keep us back. It must be through our faith in Jesus that keeps us going. The faith we have in God to protect us. The faith we have to protect us from evil. God will not let you fall, dear believer. God will give you whatever is necessary for your life, for your story. Well, that was pretty interesting. I'd like to say that I at least had some point throughout the course of this story. I'd like to think that if this message has stood out to you, I would like for you to leave a comment down below expressing a point in your life where you let comfort stop you from progressing. Hit like and subscribe. If you like my message, please check out my social medias. I've got an Instagram page. I've got this YouTube channel. Yeah, that's about it. Hope I see you around. Goodbye, everyone. Love you.